Our next speaker spent his first decade at ASMPT, where he wore various hats within the technical solutions marketing team. This has given him unique insights into the challenges and opportunities faced by electronics manufacturers across the globe. He founded the SMT Smart Network, a platform that brings together like-minded individuals to collaborate in shaping the factory of the future. With extensive experience in working with electronics manufacturers around the world, Alexander Hagenfeldt will guide us through unleashing the power of software, revolutionizing factories for future successes. Alexander, stage is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Can you hear me? Looks like it. So, second to last presentation of the day. I know it might be difficult to stay engaged, but I have prepared a few slides for you, and I hope that they will be somewhat entertaining. My topic for you today is about how we can unleash the power of software in factories. I'm coming from ASMPT and the SMT Solutions segment, so I might have a slightly different perspective on this topic than many of you in the audience today. Okay? And let me start by showing you this slide. And I'm smiling a bit at Francisco because he was quoting the same study, but he didn't use this number. Yeah, it's a very big number. It's 1.1 trillion US dollars. Yeah? It's probably bigger than most of us can comprehend. And this is actually, according to the study by PwC, what is currently being invested in digital factory transformation worldwide, yeah? All industries combined. It's still a pretty big number. And then basically on the same page, they also shared another statistic, which is that 64% of these companies are still at early stages in their digital transformation. So what does that mean? Yeah? It means that we're spending a hell of a lot of money and we want to transform, but it's taking a bit longer than we expect to implement, right? So what are we spending this money on? And they were kind enough to share some information here as well. I think you've seen a lot of use cases already today, looking at what we are trying to accomplish with Industry 4.0. And there are many different examples, but what I would like to bring to your attention by using this information here is that there are basically endless possibilities of where you can invest this money to try or to begin your journey towards a digital transformation. Would you agree? So the trick is really about figuring out where to start. And I think that most of the people that are here today have already begun their journey because you're here. Yeah? We are here in Porto. We are here to talk about MES. We are here to talk about digital transformation. And it's so nice to see so many of you have gathered here today to talk about this topic. Even though I work mainly with equipment, but also a lot with software, as you will see, this is not always our top priority. So very refreshing for me from this perspective to see all of you. So it's about figuring out where to start, and there is no one solution that fits all. There is no silver bullet that anyone has developed so far, at least to my knowledge. But the important thing is that we get started. And there is one other key driver, which has also been mentioned, I believe, twice today. Yeah? Francisco mentioned it, and I believe Michael mentioned it as well. And this key driver, when selecting use cases, is what our management typically tell us, which is, well, whatever it is, we're going to need a fast return on investment. Yeah? So there is readiness here to spend cash. We talk to our customers a lot about different projects that we could start, but before we start the project, we need to be really clear about the return on investment. Yeah? And this is not always so easy. And I believe it was also mentioned, when you implement an ERP system, you don't really talk that much about ROI. You know that you need it. And that's why you start a project and then you figure out what is best for you. Okay? Good. So, this is an SMT line. I actually wanted to use this opportunity, a little bit cheeky perhaps, but I don't know. I checked the list of who's attending before coming here. And I know that some of you are from the SMT industry. Yeah? So maybe those people could raise their hands so that I know you're actually here. Yeah? So now you've seen me. I'm here today and tomorrow. I would love to talk to you if you're interested to talk to me about SMT, whether it's machine-related or software-related, doesn't really matter. And I promise you this presentation is not intended to sell our solutions. Yeah? It's more about sharing ideas and experiences that I've made in the past, decade and a bit more in the SMT industry. Okay? Good. Yeah. In the SMT industry, and at least coming from the machine side of the business, there is one KPI that, at least in my opinion and in my experience, matters most to people in the production. What everyone is looking at is this thing right here. It's called OEE. I think most of you have heard about it. Yeah, pretty basic. You might be wondering, what has this got to do with anything? Yeah. I think there are people that would argue this is the answer to everything. What I love about this topic is that it's actually quite touchy, yeah? It's kind of like talking to people about religion or politics at a dinner party, something that you shouldn't do, yeah? Because everyone has their own idea and understanding of how to calculate OEE, yeah? And maybe if I ask you another question, how many of you are tracking OEE in your factories? Should see a lot of hands now, yeah? Okay. I will ask you later if your OEE is above 60%, and then we can see how many hands will still remain up. But I don't want to be rude, yeah? But let's look at some of the basics here about what OEE is. Maybe there are some people in the audience that aren't too familiar. So OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, is what you see right here, yeah? So at the top, you can see all the time that is available. This is basically, if you want to produce 24/7 for 365 days of the year, then that will be all your time. In most realities, we don't manufacture 24/7, 365 days a year, so there will be some form of scheduled loss. Yeah, maybe 2 weeks of vacation, where we don't manufacture, so you can subtract that with a good conscience because you are intentionally not going to use the equipment that you spent a lot of money on for that time, yeah? But that's okay. Then we have the availability loss. So now you've done your planning and your machines are supposed to be productive for this planned production time. That is the aim of the game, right? But things happen and sometimes you will lose availability of your machines for whatever reason, yeah? Maybe you need to do, move something around or maintenance, maybe, there are different reasons what can happen here. I don't want to dive into the specifics, but you might lose some of the availability of that machine to actually do the work that you intended it for. And then you have the net runtime, yeah? Which is when the machine is actually producing. So it's up and running, the lamps are green, okay? This is what management loves to see. Your lines are producing, they're making money for you. But there might still be a performance loss. You might not be running the line at maximum capacity, yeah? And this is hard to see because all the lamps are green. But we're still losing time, yeah? So that's also where, of course, data might be very useful. And then at the end of the time, at the end of the line here, fully productive time. Even when you finish a product, there is a possibility that a mistake was made somewhere along the line, and you actually have bad quality. So, of course, the time that you spent building the bad product was wasted, right? So we need to subtract that as well. So I think now everyone understands what OEE is, and I hope you also understand why this is so useful in any manufacturing site, really, as an indicator, where do I stand, yeah? Because if this is at 100%, which is ideal, then everything is running perfectly. When it starts deviating from that, then I know I have a problem, and you can start looking in these areas to figure out what can I do to get more out of my equipment, yeah? And this is the world that I'm quite used to, right? We sell machines. Our customers use these machines, and they want to maximize OEE. But in doing so, they maximize the profitability of your entire organization. So it's an important KPI, right? Good. Now, what's not so good, yeah? And these are generalized statistics, but the best that I could find, and they actually resonate with what I've seen, so I think it's a pretty good indicator. I mentioned before, 100% OEE means you're doing everything perfectly, yeah? 85%, that's world-class, okay? At least according to this data. 60% is typical, okay? And I believe 40% was low. Now, those of you who raised your hands, I don't know where you are on this scale, yeah? And I don't want to be rude, as I mentioned. Yeah, it's a bit of a touchy subject. But let's just put it this way. I think that about 10, maybe 15% of manufacturers, at least speaking for the SMT industry, would actually classify in this space, yeah? Everyone else is below that, and most of, or many customers that I know are actually in the typical range. Yeah? So, seems like we have a problem. We should probably be able to get more out of the equipment that we already have. Correct? And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to help, and we'll get to that in a second, our customers get the most out of the equipment. Before we talk about that, I forgot to mention what I have seen as well is by visiting factories all over the world, by the way. It's one of the things I really consider myself very lucky for, having worked for ASMPT for the past almost 12 years now. It's a global company, and it got me to really see the world, travel the world, and see factories all over the world and how they're working with our machines. And you start seeing patterns, yeah? You start seeing, you know, if the factory is clean, yeah, always a good sign. If they have paper and stuff lying around everywhere and they're a little bit messy, then it's probably a typical sign of a not so well-running organization. But what you also notice is that the companies that are performing the best, the companies that are best in class, they are already dependent on software. And I'm not just talking about our software solutions, because we have many, yeah? We have fantastic software solutions, but there are many other solutions on the market as well. The difference here is that these customers actually made a decision years ago to invest in software. They are willing to invest in software. And that's not always the case, yeah? At least, again, speaking from my experience. So, there's a pattern and a tendency that people who invest or like to invest in software have a higher OEE. Back to the SMT line. I'm not going to explain you all the basics here about how this process works. Again, if you are interested and you want to speak about SMT, I am available. We also have a show in the pavilion. I believe there's one more show tomorrow. Rob is giving me the thumbs up. That's great. Where you can have a look at some of our equipment. Okay, so we have the SMT line, and yeah, right. Remember when I said OEE is the most important KPI? Remember when I said that even when the line is up and running and the lamps are green, we might be losing production? Well, let's take a closer look. This is some other data, which also hasn't been shared yet today. This time it's the Boston Consulting Group that shared some information with us, but it's related to OEE, and I think it's generic enough and applicable enough to at least what I've seen in our industry to bring some more transparency into what is happening here, yeah? So again, keep the OEE in mind. We have the total time here. We reduce the planned idle time. We have our uptime, which starts at 90%, and then we have these unplanned stops, yeah? What are these unplanned stops? Because they are costing us a lot of money, yeah? Unplanned stops, micro stops, whatever these stops might be, that seems to be, there seems to be a general trend here that this is where we need to start looking for answers, okay? And I can fully attest to that. Unplanned stops, by the way, this is anything that causes your machine, and keep in mind, in our case, this is an entire line that is affected. So if one of the machines that are connected in the line stop working, then you're actually blocking the entire line, right? So, and a unplanned stop, that means anything typically, again, this is the philosophy of how you measure OEE, that causes the machine to stop for less than 10 minutes, okay? But 10 minutes times 150, which it says up there, it's a lot, yeah? And that's, and it adds up very, very quickly, okay? So this is where we want to bring transparency. And what causes these stops, it's not only that the machine is not doing what it's supposed to, it could be waiting for something as well, assistance, yeah? Maybe the operator wasn't there to provide it with the right material at the right time, and therefore we're waiting, yeah? There are many different reasons why these things happen. And they happen more frequently when we are not in control of the situation, when we don't have a structured approach to how we are using our equipment, okay? And this is where software really can help. And we have a software portfolio that goes with our machines, which help our customers optimize their workflows to make sure that these things don't happen, yeah? Why did we start investing in developing software, being a machine provider initially? Well, because our customers were asking us to help them, yeah? They came to us and they said, look, we bought these very nice machines from you, and now we're trying to use them in our factories, but we're not getting the utilization that you promised us. We said, well, that can't be. And then we go there and we test, and under ideal conditions, the machine is obviously performing where it should be. And then we start understanding what's happening at the customer site, and well, even though the problem typically is is happening during production, we work with our customers to come up with solutions to help them avoid this type of production loss during production. Okay, and I have some examples of that. One more comment, coming back to the SMT line, before we dive into two case studies. I mentioned this is a production line, and I would also like to use this opportunity, at least from an equipment supplier's perspective and a solutions provider, to mention that what you see right here, we don't sell all of these machines. Yeah? Typically, in an SMT factory, you have different suppliers because we can't even build all the equipment that is required. And when you look at this picture, you can really see that this is a line, and you would expect that there would be some form of communication happening in this line. And I have to tell you, it's unfortunately very limited. Yeah? The amount of data that we can pass on from one vendor to the next is extremely limited, at least here on a line level. But there are ways around that. And us as a company, as ASMPT, we are heavily backing the IPC standards, which will enable easier machine-to-machine communication on a line level. Yeah? Not sure if everyone in here is familiar with IPC or the IPC Hermes standard. Maybe you're more familiar with IPC CFX, which does not focus on the horizontal machine-to-machine communication, but more about the vertical communication, typically from a machine to an MES system. Yeah? Now, these standards, I would go too far if I told you that they are already fully established in the market. They are still relatively new. It is something I hear more and more talk around. There's a lot of promise what we can do with these standards if we want to build a scalable future where it's easy to integrate equipment with whatever system we are using and new technologies that we want to introduce. I'd like to see a world where we have these standards established. Yeah? This is just a data communication interface which allows us to basically swap systems more easily in the future. Okay? Then there are limitations with these standards, with the amount of data and so on. So maybe they're not quite mature enough to be ready for what you intend to do in your factories, but I wanted to bring some awareness around these standard interfaces. Okay? Good. Right, so I showed you a picture of a line, yeah? And one line seems hard enough. Maybe I forgot to mention that one of those SMT lines typically will place components at a rate of somewhere between 120 to 500,000 an hour, yeah? So these lines are eating material very fast. okay? And until now, we haven't really found a way to fully automate it, so this material has to be replenished by machines. What I'm getting at is the takt time of modern equipment is much, much higher than it was, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, yeah? This is putting our workers under enormous stress on the shop floor because they are the ones that are feeding the equipment with the material that needs to be processed, yeah? So they are the ones that need tools and systems in place to help them do their job in the best way possible, okay? So just to give you some perspective, normally it's not just one machine or one line. Normally there are several lines, and that will also vary from, let's say, 2 lines up to 36 lines here in Europe, okay? Just for some perspective. Now, we have developed a software portfolio which is directly connected with our, or linked with our machines, where we can help customers in different areas to optimize their workflows. Yeah? And with this, I'm not talking about creating a digital backbone and some of the things that we've been talking about today, but it is something that can definitely exist as complementary to what we have been discussing. What we can offer here on this level is a comprehensive software suite to optimize your workflows for our machines, okay? We have business logic in our software that is maybe only relevant for our machines, but that can help our customers use them more effectively, yeah? And of course, this is compatible with other systems as well. And I have one example, and I'm looking at the time. I need to speed up a little bit, but I have one example about planning, yeah? And I wasn't sure if I was going to show this slide or not, but I think I will show it because it was mentioned before. You can tell I'm a little bit nervous, yeah, because I'm here at an MES summit and I'm going to show you a picture of Excel, yeah. So this might really backfire, but you know, how many of you are still using Excel to run your production? Not completely, but at least partially. Do we have any brave? Well, yeah, yeah. Okay, I believe there's more, yeah. I keep seeing this wherever I go. Not just this, I also see, you know, whiteboards and paper, and it's usually quite chaotic. Excel, you know, I think it's called Microsoft Office for a reason, right? I don't think this has anything to do in a production site. I realize it's a tool that's easy to harness and use for your own purpose. Francisco made a nice example. He's an engineer, so he could calculate anything he wants in terms of ROI, right? And so on. No, but it definitely has its limitations. What the example that I wanted to share with you was, and I will not name any names, but something stuck in my mind, and I think it will stay there forever, because I was at a customer site, and we were talking about planning, and they showed me, you know, how they were doing the planning and so on. Of course, Excel-based, and there was a person responsible for this. And I asked him, you know, well, what happens when that person is, you know, on vacation or sick? He said, well, then somebody else will have to step up and fill in, you know. And then he also, more or less in the same breath, said, well, you know, come to think about it, whenever that happens, our productivity goes down significantly, okay? And he basically said that the current output of the line carried the signature of the planner. I'm translating from German, so maybe it didn't come across the same. What I'm trying to get at is that we should not rely on a single person for a process, yeah? We can capture that process in software, whether that's in our planning software, which is dedicated for our machines, or whether that's in an MES system or any other system. We need to somehow find ways to take a manual process and turn it into a software process, which we can also then automate, right? Good. So we don't want to see Excel in factories. We also have another example here, and I will talk about operations now, yeah? So this is another example, one of the customers that is part of our so-called SMT Smart Network. It is it's a network of customers that we use as reference customers for other reference customers. So of course, these are our champions, in some areas, and the numbers that you see here might be a bit higher than your typical average, okay? But this particular customer, we were able to help with our software solutions to really bring more throughput out of the same line that he had, and I think, this particular customer, they definitely have the right mindset. And they started building a factory. I was there, when was this, 7 years ago, when they started investing with us and building the environment that they wanted. And they really had this idea from the very beginning how they were going to set it up. At least, they had a vision. Where they are today is somewhere completely different. But they had this initial plan, and they wanted to do this plan. They wanted to realize this new factory together with us. And they were not afraid to invest in software. In fact, they even designed some of their processes around our software at the time, and became very dependent on it. But that had a lot of upsides for them as well, because we keep improving our software, and they could get they would get frequent updates, more functionality, and so on. And they knew they were not big enough as a customer to be able to place requirements on ASMPT to get exactly what they wanted. So they had a very special and unique philosophy. That's kind of why I wanted to share this use case. But in terms of productivity, how they are utilizing the line, in terms of the number of operators that are required, we were able to achieve a lot. And the key really was the successful deployment of some of our software solutions. One more example, and then I have some closing statements. So another example here, looking at the area of material logistics. I don't want to dive too far into the specifics because this is industry specific. So if you have nothing to do with SMT, maybe it's not so interesting. But in SMT, I think I already mentioned, we process a lot of material. And this material is not coming from one big reel. We have thousands of part numbers, thousands of different package types. It's actually quite impressive. And you need to keep track of where all this material is. An ERP system stands no chance against this variation. They cannot see what is happening on the shop floor, and therefore we once developed a software to help our customers get visibility, get transparency of where their material transactions were going on the shop floor. And this is what we did together with this customer, and as you can see, there were a lot of improvements, once again related to the overall OEE of how they were using the machines. Okay? Good. So, final slide. And I wanted to share with you also a bit of an outlook of where we are today and where I hope we will be going forwards. So, me coming from ASMPT, the SMT solutions part, we have our machines, and this will of course remain a very important part of our business. We have our software portfolio, and we will continue to innovate here to find new ways of how our customers can maximize their overall equipment effectiveness with our machines. What we are kind of limited towards is using our software for our machines in different areas of the factory. At least that was the case until quite recently, when we now have critical manufacturing by our side. So we have right now, thanks to critical manufacturing and ASMPT's working relationship, created a new space here in the middle where we can start thinking about new opportunities that we couldn't even think about before because we didn't have access to this whole general commonality type stuff which you see up there. But critical manufacturing do. So we're trying to really use our knowledge coming from the machine specifics down here and speaking to them to create new solutions of value right there in the middle. And I'm really excited about that future because we heard a lot today about what is coming. I know what we are working on, and a lot of these new technologies that, whether it's AI or machine learning, what we want to do with robots, automation, that kind of thing, That's all going to happen in this space right here. Okay? So that's it from my side. One final thought. This presentation was about revolutionizing the factories for future success. A revolution typically starts off, or at least we remember them starting off by something very, very small. Yeah? But to have a successful revolution, you need a tremendous amount of organized effort. Yeah? This is not just going to happen. You need to get organized, and you need to start investing in whatever use case you think is the right use case, in whatever scope you think is the right scope for your factory. And remember, the people that I've seen at least, that are out there with the highest OEE are the ones that really have the willingness to invest in software. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Alexander, for telling us about SMT, OEE, monitoring, and optimizing. Thank you. That was great.